Seeing as I reviewed the Fatal Frame movie in the last video, a movie I thoroughly despise, I thought I'd swing right back around to the other side this time and review a movie that I enjoyed. Get rid of the taint and look at something a little more fun. This one's going to be an interesting ride, so buckle up and prepare yourself for Shirai-san. This movie, at least at the time of writing this, hasn't had an official wide English release, although it does seem to be known in English-speaking circles as Stare. It's also based on a book that has yet to receive an English translation, so if you're going to go looking for it yourself, you're probably only going to find fan subs at this point. I both read the book and watched the movie in Japanese, so that's what I'm working with. So, what is Shirai-san and why do I like it so much? Shirai-san was originally published by one of my favourite authors, Otsuichi, in November 2019. It was then turned into a movie that was released in Japan on January 10th, 2020, only 2 short months later. Now, here's where things get interesting. Not only was the book written by Otsuichi, but the movie as well. And not only was the script written by the book author, but he directed the movie as well. This isn't a case where you can blame the writer or director for changing things from the book and ruining the story. It was literally the same man. It was his work all along. Any changes that were made from the book to the movie were done by the original creator himself, and there were definitely some changes made, which is what I'll be focusing on today because I find them fascinating. Now, Otsuichi is hardly the first author ever to write and then direct his own work. Even Ito Junji has done this with the Tomio movie. But this makes criticizing the changes an interesting proposition. Can you really blame the author for not understanding or drastically changing the work when it was his work to begin with? But first things first, what exactly is Shirai-san about? In short, Shirai-san is an urban legend, a creepypasta, a curse, something whispered of that dooms you once you learn the name. Boiled down to its most pure essence, Shirai-san is a being who will hunt you down once you learn her name. The mere act of knowing her name is enough. That's it. You just have to know her name, and she will mercilessly hunt you down until she kills you. She's a bit like It Follows in that sense. She never gives up, and there's no way to stop her. It's a seemingly hopeless curse from which none can escape. There are, of course, a few conditions that go alongside this curse, or urban legend, or whatever you want to call it. In general, it's unknown when she will come for you. It could be right away, it could be somewhere further down the line. All that's for sure is that she will come for you. She won't stop. You will also hear bells when she arrives because she holds these looped through holes in her hands. You will also recognize her because of her massively oversized eyes. And, as long as you keep looking at her, she won't advance. Blink, turn to the side, whatever. The moment you aren't looking at her, she will move again. And by then, it's probably too late. Death is messy and not a pleasant experience. This premise alone got me to buy the book, not even factoring in that Otsuichi is one of my favorite authors. The book reads like a really well done Ni-channel creepypasta, crossed with something like Suzuki Koji's Ring. There are more than a few Ring inspirations here, right down to the main character's last name and a trip to a hot spring that curses a bunch of unwitting teenagers. But Shirai-san is definitely no Sadako. She has much wider and far easier reach than her. Again, you just have to know her name. And now you do, so you might be next. I'll be discussing spoilers for the ending from here on out, so if you want to watch the film yourself before being spoiled, go do that first. But let's get to the meat of this review and the part I find most fascinating: how the film entirely changes the book's ending. The first half of Shirai-san is almost a shot-for-shot recreation of the book. I was fascinated while watching it at how close they were, even down to the exact lines of dialogue much of the time. I was starting to wonder if the entire movie would be that, but that wasn't what Otsuichi had in mind, apparently. He took the opportunity to change the story between mediums, ending them on literally entirely opposite ends of the spectrum. Let me explain. In the book, the story proceeds with the two main characters learning the history behind Shirai-san from a woman who conveniently has a problem remembering names. Only names. It's how she survived the Shirai-san curse while everyone else involved was killed. There are massive sections dedicated to the lore behind how she apparently came to be. There was a shrine maiden who was locked in a jail cell by her family. She had recently been pregnant but lost the baby. This maiden took revenge upon the entire village by creating a curse, in a manner of speaking, using the local mountain god to do her bidding. Anyone who knew the name Shirai-san would die. So, she used this woman with amnesia only for names to spread the name throughout the village on a piece of paper. Everyone died. Except her, of course, who went on to live a normal life because she couldn't remember the name. In a neat little twist, the name Shirai-san is revealed to mean, in essence, death comes from the mountains. Shi, death. Dai, comes. San, mountain. It sounds very much like a common surname, Shirai, with san attached to the end, but that's not what it actually means. Death comes from the mountains. Shirai-san is the mountain god, and she has the power to not only kill, but to reincarnate as well. This is important and plays into the next part of the story. One day, the woman woke up to find a baby by her pillow. Shirai-san had seemingly given her this gift, and then disappeared. She raised the baby as her own, and this child, a girl, grew up and then had a daughter of her own, who looked suspiciously like her grandmother. Remember, they're not supposed to be blood related, so this is important. How can they look alike if they don't share blood? Having learnt all this, the two main characters realize that the core of the curse is simply knowing Shirai-san's name, but they aren't the only people who have been investigating it. There's also a journalist and his wife, an author. They lost their daughter when she was only young, and neither has ever really recovered from it. The journalist dies when Shirai-san comes for him, but his wife, an author, has already started turning her story into a novel. In a fascinating twist, the story doesn't end with the main characters realizing what the curse is and stopping it. On the contrary, the journalist's wife posts the story on the internet for all to see. Now everyone knows who Shirai-san is, and people start dying all over the country. It's a creepypasta apocalypse. People initially still believe her to be nothing more than an urban legend because of the low numbers of people that only seem to die every few days. But the fact remains that she has now been unleashed upon the entire country. There are news reports on the legend, television specials, everything. There's no one who hasn't heard the name Shirai-san. She is going to come for you. Now it's just a matter of when. She has a lot of people to work through, after all. The explicit reason why the journalist's wife did this is never stated. However, if you read between the lines, it becomes very obvious. The woman with name amnesia wasn't actually who she claimed to be. She was, in reality, the shrine maiden herself. That baby that was supposedly left by her pillow one day wasn't just given to her randomly by Shirai-san. It was her real dead daughter, revived, and given in exchange for all the lives she offered in return. The villagers. Shirai-san took them and, in exchange, gave the Shrine Maiden her dead daughter back. And the journalist's wife? She was the Shrine Maiden's granddaughter, who just happened to look suspiciously like her. Remember earlier when I mentioned that she and her husband also lost their daughter? Now it becomes clear why she would spread Shirai-san's story. She realized that Shirai-san has the power to bring back the dead. She wants her daughter back. She is a direct descendant of the original Shrine Maiden, and so she too makes a deal with Shirai-san. I will give you the entire country in exchange for my daughter's life. Right at the end of the story, the two main characters visit the woman and hear a child laughing somewhere in the house. She says it's simply a relative's child, and they never see her face, but the implication is clear. Shirai-san delivered on her end of the bargain, and now she will keep killing as well, as long as there are people who know her name. I love this ending. It's so fantastically apocalyptic. Everyone is doomed because one woman wanted her daughter back, but whereas the original curse only destroyed a single village because there was no way to transfer it further, technology has improved so much that we can now share stories with the world instantly. The entire country, maybe even the entire planet, is now doomed because that curse has now been shared over the internet. It's diabolical and I love it. So, with that out of the way, what happens in the movie? Well, the entire opposite. First of all, the Shrine Maiden and her entire story is inexplicably removed. The woman with name amnesia, the Shrine Maiden, doesn't even exist. Otsuichi decides to use the visual medium to tell another story instead. This one is much smaller in scale and, at least in my opinion, far less effective. The journalist still dies, but it's he who realizes that the more people who know about Shirai-san, the less chance they have of dying. He struggles with the two main characters who obviously don't want this story to spread and kill random people, and the woman falls down the mountain and smashes her head on a rock. The journalist calls his wife to get her to spread the story deliberately, but Shirai-san arrives for him and he's unable to get the message through due to bad reception. Shirai-san claims her prize and that's it. Game over. Although not outright stated, it's hinted that his wife also died when the main male character visits her house later and discovers nobody has heard from her in quite some time. Meanwhile, the main female character, who hit her head, now has amnesia. She doesn't even know who her partner in crime is, let alone Shirai-san. This leaves the man as the only living character who remembers Shirai-san, and the movie ends with her coming to collect him as well. Her curse apparently now ended, with nobody on the planet left to remember her name. I think it's interesting that Otsuichi was able to explore both ideas across different mediums, but ultimately I find that the book ending was more interesting and impactful. There's the implication as you're reading it that you too are now involved in the curse. After all, you know her name as well. You're reading her story, just like everyone else. But Shirai-san only kills in intervals of once every few days, due to her trip back and forth to the mountain, and she picks her targets randomly, so you never know when she'll come for you. You could be next, or she might never reach you at all, not with so many targets on her list now. This is a more satisfying and scary ending to me than the curse suddenly dying with the last person who knew her name. So, from that angle, I think the movie fails to deliver what made the book so good in the first place. It's reduced from an immersive curse with incredibly rich lore and backstory, as well as logical reasons for people to carry out seemingly illogical actions, to a watered-down urban legend movie with very little bite. I will, however, give the movie credit for Shirai-san's design, which could have easily ended up comical with how she's described, but They struck a nice balance where she looks just uncanny enough to set your nerves on edge. She looks great, and when she appears, you do feel a sense of fear at what might happen next. Do I think you should watch this movie? Absolutely. It's not a terrible movie. A little dull maybe, especially in comparison to the book, but it's worth at least a watch. But I am disappointed that Otsuichi decided to change the ending to something far less interesting than what the book delivered. It's nice that he was able to explore both options, but it's a little sad we didn't get to see the Shirai-san apocalypse take place on the big screen. That's something that could have been just as easily conveyed through cinema as it was through text. But what do you guys think about this one? Have you seen the movie yourself? If so, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.